then that knowledge is not disappearing, but is, if we don't leave it, gets weak. And if it gets weak, at some point will disappear. Take, for example, the language. If you don't speak your language, you will lose it eventually. But there are many more things that are part of a way of life. So that's why I had a hard time with the elders, trying to convince them to write something. And that's what they told me. We already gave everything to you. Well, not to me personally, but to us as people. But anyway, one of my elders, we call her Abuela Juana Pacheco. She was recently up here helping us with a ceremony to celebrate Zompantli, the Day of the Dead. So she wrote this for us, for this gathering. Ever since 1492, the Europeans stole our fruits, cut off our branches, burned our trunk, but could not kill our roots. We're still here, as strong as ever. We have come here today to Pashute, to honor our ancestors and all generations before us that struggled throughout their lives to keep alive our roots, that offer their blood to nourish this sacred ground we walk on. We are here today in Patuxet to show the people of this country and the people of the four directions that despite that we are not in mainstream media or prime time, we still are here as strong as ever. We are here today in Patuxet to tell this country that it is good to have a black brother in the White House, but also to remind you that the struggle, our struggle, is not over yet. We are here today to tell you that we will continue our struggle until this country stops ignoring us in all public debates. We will continue our struggle until no one is considered an illegal immigrant. We will continue our struggle until we stop racism, sexism, homophobia, war. We will continue our struggle until the government, this government, and the governments of this continent accepts that we, Native people, are sovereign nations. We will continue our struggle until we give our brother Leonard Peltier justice and freedom. This is the sky of the eagle, the condor, the quetzal. This is the sacred land of Pajasapa, Black Hills, Chaco Canyon, Tenochtitlan, Aztlán, Petenitza, Abyala, Machu Picchu, Amazons. This is the homeland of Massasoit, Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, Tecumseh, Geronimo, Chief Joseph, Anacanoa, Cuauhtémoc, Tecumuman, Ruminahu, Pachachute, Tupac Amaru. We have come here today to Patuxet to remind the people of this country and the people of the four directions that we, the native peoples, we are the spirit of this land. Today, here in Patuxet, we look around and see many friends, many colors. We thank you for sharing in this struggle. We are strong. We are here as strong as ever. Native peoples are alive. The struggle goes on. Never again a world without us. Tiawi.
Shortly after the election of Barack Obama, Leonard Peltier sent out some greetings from the Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary. And I'd like to read part of what he sent. It says, 8 years ago, everyone placed their hope and trust with a couple named Bill and Hillary Clinton. But we were betrayed at the last minute. I know that many of my friends, family, and supporters were crushed. I began to feel the weight and pressure of a lifetime of being unjustly imprisoned. This began to crowd me into a corner of my cell and then in my mind. But it was this thing that has been our battle cry for so many years. In the spirit of Crazy Horse, I remembered what he stood for and remained a warrior until his last breath. It is a strength that we stand upon when we are right. We were right to be in Oglala, and we were right to be prepared to defend ourselves. What wasn't right is that a jury never got to hear any of this testimony. And the rest of the trial was a product of the fabrication and then manipulation of the FBI. This spirit of Crazy Horse is a spirit of total resistance to the wrongs perpetrated towards your people, community, family, and yourself. Some of us called it outrage, but that is just merely an emotion without resolving the issue. It is when we make a conscious choice to try and balance the wrongs in this society that we are being compelled by this spirit of resistance to stand in defense of the wronged. That spirit cannot be conquered.
And Father Sky above him, Leonard, keep up the spirit of the Red Road.
I tell you this because I want to believe that I can stand here with you next year, a free man. It would be an honor for me to stand in your circle, to mourn the people who have fallen in the path of colonialization. I carry many names, many people whom I want to remember their sacrifice for me. Those names begin with Joe Stunts and hopefully have ended with Standing Deer.
I have a few words about our election. The election is now over. We have our president. A long journey which began with the refusal of one woman to give up her seat on a bus that inspired a cry of outrage in Selma, Alabama, which led us to the siege on a church in Wounded Knee, South Dakota, the takeover of Alcatraz and the BIA headquarters in Washington, D.C., Martin Luther King's March on Washington. This road, which started with whispered voices in the dark, rose to a roar of dissent in the last year and has finally given us a new face for America, efforts for peace in the Middle East. So I want to tell you a story now. And this story is about a journey I took last spring. To begin the story, I will tell you about the land I come from. My people have lived on that land always, far beyond any history's records, far beyond any living memory, deep into the time of legend. You cannot tell the story of my people without talking about the land. They are one single story. And this past spring, I went to Palestine 48. and I stood in East Jerusalem and took part in a panel discussion with Israeli Jews and Israeli Arabs and Palestinians and international peace activists. And we all despaired about the lack of any real concrete movement towards peace in Palestine and Israel. We were all on the same page, and we talked at great length about how a just peace could be achieved and what concessions each side were willing to make, final status issues. And I said, if we were all on the same page, then why isn't there peace in the Middle East? If we can sit here and agree on all of these things, why isn't there peace in the Middle East? Because $5 billion a year out of the military-industrial complex goes to Israel to feed a brutal occupation. And one of the women said to me, "You can't really understand what it's like to be Jewish. You can't really understand what it's like unless you are the survivor of a Holocaust or the grandchild of a Holocaust survivor." And she started talking about how many people died in the Holocaust. And I said, I understand. The legacy of transgenerational trauma is not yours alone. In 1491, the Americas were populated by 100 million people, 1/5 of the world's population. 10 years later, there were 10 million people in the Americas. Genocide is genocide. Cultural genocide is still genocide. So last spring, I went on a journey. I traveled to Palestine 48 and found the indigenous inhabitants of a once vast and beautiful land had been invaded, colonized, brutalized, and occupied. These same people who had once roamed this vast and beautiful land were now confined to small parcels of land within the great territory they once roamed. It was a land that was occupied by a military regime whose thirst for resources and power had reduced all populations by tenfold. The place where women and children were routinely slaughtered, where men were detained, imprisoned, in squalid cells without hope for freedom, without due process. Does any of this sound familiar? A place where traditional villages were destroyed and people were removed to refugee camps, reservations, removed without compensation, without reason, without hope for the future. But in this place of sorrow, I found a people rich in culture, music, language, arts, where hospitality is offered freely and graciously, without hesitation. A cup of tea, a bowl of olives, a cake, even in homes where people struggle to feed their children. I found a people with quiet dignity who refused to give up their hopes, their dreams, their pride, who laughed easily and often, even at the most difficult places in their lives. I found a people who epitomize the ideal. To exist is to resist. I traveled 10,000 miles from home and found myself in the same place. I come from there, and I have memories. Born as mortals are, I have a mother and a house with many windows. I have brothers, friends, and a prison cell with a cold window. Mine is the wave snatched by seagulls. I have my own view and an extra blade of grass. Mine is the moon at the far edge of words, and the bounty of birds, and the immortal olive tree. I walked this land before the swords turned its living body into a laden table. I come from there. I render the sky unto her mother when the sky weeps for her mother. And I weep to make myself known to a returning cloud.
I learned all the words worthy of the court of blood so that I could break the rule. I learned all the words and broke them up to make a single word, homeland. Shalom Akshav, peace